Throughout this documentary, there will be themes of animal abuse and neglect, with images some people might find uncomfortable to watch. Romania, a country that hosts just under 20 million people. It is a place of natural beauty and amazing architecture. However, behind all that, they are fighting an ongoing problem that stems back to the 1960s. Stray dogs. Stray dogs have been a prominent issue for years. Part of the cause of this was communist leader Nicolae Ceausescu. Emma Wassall, who lived in Romania for most of her life, tells us about what life was like under his rule.
Ceausescu, he basically, he was a young guy and he believed in socialism, right? So he said, look, it was too much the rich and the poor. We need to, he had great ideas to kind of build the middle class, to build more, like affordable houses, for example. He made the country poor by taking everything away, all the rights, everything, nice things, and that was to pay the national debt. Okay. So he paid the national debt in just before he died. I think it was mid-80s. But then the country was even poorer. Right. Like I said, the rationing started, and that was the communists. So that was the dictatorship. So he clearly went absolutely Jalali, and him and his wife, and you couldn't say anything, you couldn't do anything. You had to be like really, really, really careful who to talk to. There were people who were spies, catch people out, they were getting paid. There was so many, files they got, kind of like brought out to see who was who and who was. We had no food. We had to live, it had rationing, one chicken, per family, per month, 1 kilo of sugar, 1 liter of oil. The shelves were absolutely empty. There was, nothing like, dog food. And by the way, dog food and that, they never existed. So dogs used to eat like food, whatever, leftovers, leftovers of the household. And then the situation got really bad, and I think what happened, because there was lots of stray dogs breeding like hell, they were developing rabies, and this concept of a vet, and the vet in Romania was purely, for farms and like horses, cows. Now, I don't recall vets for dogs, therefore they couldn't spray them or, was new to them and that sort of thing. So they could not have any birth control preventions or anything like that.
Then in 1989, the revolution happened, and Ceausescu and his wife were killed. Fast forward 30 years later, and the country is still recovering, and stray dogs are still a massive issue. Leslie Ford is a British businesswoman who a few years ago set up a rescue centre to help battle the problem.
Several years ago, back in 2014, in Romania, they brought in a law that allowed dogs to be killed by the public, by the authorities, because they were completely overrun on the streets. And just anyone was allowed to kill dogs. So, of course, they were doing it in some terrible ways. Some people in Romania got in touch with me and said, can you help us? Because they're killing our dogs. Can you take some of our German Shepherds and rehome them in the UK? And I was a bit like, oh, but, I knew a little bit about overseas rescue, but this was all a bit. So to cut a long story short, I said yes. I helped a few local rescues and brought some German Shepherds over and rehomed them here. And then there was a dog called Sadie, who was a German Shepherd, and she was being fostered by someone. The day before transport was due to leave, transport got in touch with me and said, the dog's not going to be ready to travel. And I said, oh, right, why is it not ready to travel? And they said, oh, it's not well. And there was lots of excuses about why this dog couldn't travel. And what had actually happened was the dog had been dead for quite a while. It had been killed probably 7 weeks before, but the fosterer was still taking the money for the fostering. And so that made me think, oh, actually, I'm doing something here from a distance that I really don't know very much about, and now I'm being scammed. So I got on a plane and I went to Romania, and I did a couple of weeks of going around some absolutely appalling public dog shelters, open shelters. I saw things that I would never be able to unsee, just some terrible dogs eating dogs, the terrible abuse that the dogs were going through. And I just thought I need to do something about this. So that was how it started. And then I got together with some friends and sort of business acquaintances and said, I'm going to do this little project. And I just want to save some dogs, and I'm going to do some work at a shelter out there.
And in honour of Sadie the Alsatian, Sadie Stray Dog Rescue was born. Unfortunately though, for dogs like Sadie, this is the reality in Romania, and people like Leslie and the team at the rescue centre are actively trying to battle the problem. Sadies will rescue dogs off the street and find their forever homes for them back in the UK.
My name's Jan. I've got 2 dogs at the moment. They're Romanian rescues, Artie and Dazzle. I grew up with dogs as a child, and as soon as I was able to, as an adult, I've always had dogs and always had rescues. My first was from the RSPCA. Then we had another dog that was rescued because she was a breeding dog, but not very good mother, 18 months old, and they've just gathered. But I would always rescue, I'd always adopt. When I retired, I had 3 old dogs, and they all died one after the other during the first years of retirement. So I needed a young dog that was going to be active with me. And I was put in contact with Sadie Stray Dog Rescue, and the first dog I saw there was Dazzle. She'd been left in a box outside the factory near the shelter at about 12 weeks old on her own. And after a month, I adopted her. Because I always had multiple dogs, I decided I wanted another one. And not long after Dazzle arrived, Artie popped up on Sadie's site, having been dumped in a litter of 7 at a couple of days old. That's the culture. They don't want the puppies, they just dump them. And one of Sadie's friends hand-reared them. Sadly, I think 4 of them died, 3 survived, and I adopted Artie, again about 4 months old. At the shelter, there are 3 main volunteers. Laura Myatt, who is a British young woman who visited Sadie's shelter a few years ago and decided that she was going to give up her business in the UK and go over there and just work for Sadie's. Also 2 Romanian young people, Laura Deeren and Cosmo Bogdan, who joined the shelter, and they're the 3 main people who look after up to 500 dogs. Local workers come in and clean the kennel sometimes, organise the feeding of the dogs and some exercise, but those 3 are the mainstays at the shelter. In the UK, they've also got a small team of volunteers who deal with the admin. They each have a specific area that they specialise in. There are rehomers, people who look after the fosters, fundraisers, and they're always on call for anybody who adopts or fosters from the shelter to support and give advice. Sadies is a non-profit organisation, totally dependent on what we in the UK can send out, or and other countries can send over. I've been collecting for them for about 2 years now. I put a little advert on social media and said, anybody got any bedding, anything dog or cat orientated? So I've still got lots of soft dog beds, loads of bedding. What I really need to take over, what they're still wanting, are the dog crates, the cat carriers, food, obviously. Dogs get fed over there, but their quality food is not as good as ours, so they really appreciate it. And medicines. Medicines, again, they do get treated. Every dog is, when it's picked up off the street, is checked for any diseases and treated appropriately. But our medicines are much stronger, I suppose, really. So I've 5 times now I've driven donations up to Northampton, where it then joins a big freight lorry to be transported over to Romania. And people are so generous, they just want to donate now. The dogs there are desperate. They're, two of my fosters, for example, one had lived on the streets for 10 years. I fostered him, and through Sadie's promotion, he's now been adopted. In this country, people wouldn't look at those dogs at all. They wouldn't look at them. It's just the charity highlights them, and they've been adopted for happy lives. One of their priorities is to spay and neuter the dogs and cats out there. Their stray dog problem is massive, and they're making a difference. They're making a little difference. So in the 3 days that we ran the spayathons, we neutered and sprayed 217 animals, mostly dogs again. And that's going to prevent thousands of cats and puppies being born. Also worked at the shelter, just helping, because it's a very small team and any help is beneficial to them, and trying to socialise the dogs that are in kennels there. They've got a lovely socialisation area. We just play with the dogs like you would play with any dog. And the ones that we were highlighting actually got adopted not long after we left. The mayor of Bacau is supportive. He likes their spayathons. He knows they're making a difference. But the mayor was also sending out his workers with lorries out to the gypsy encampments, onto the streets, to bring the dogs in so they could be spayed and neutered and then returned, because they're making a difference. They're just amazing people with a massive job, and it's not their fault. A lot of it comes from the politics recently, where dogs were not allowed to stay around town when people moved into the high-rise flats, etc. And they are just doing what they can to make a difference.
If you would like to find out more about how you can get involved with Sadies or donate, then head over to the website at www.sadiestray-dog-rescue.com.